Hi everyone, this is Mark Buckles from New Mexico State University Carlsbad. This VoiceThread PowerPoint lecture presents ideas on verbal messages, with some emphasis on context, confirmation, disconfirmation, and language's limitations. Among the goals in Learning Module 4 are to learn how language works and to learn to use verbal messages more effectively. Let's consider some basic principles of verbal messages. First, meanings are in people. This deceptively simple statement demands some reflection. Two different people can speak the same words, but the meaning of the message can be quite different. Consider the words, I love you. Language is both denotative and connotative. Words have dictionary definitions, but also come with associations and histories. Additionally, messages depend on context, and they vary in politeness and in assertiveness. Meanings are in people. So to uncover meaning, we need to look into people and not merely into words. We need to remember that meanings change over time, and that they are different between cultures. A common pattern of misconception is known as bypassing. Bypassing can take either of two forms. Two people in conversation using different words that have the same meaning, or two people in conversation using the same words that have different meanings. Language is denotative and connotative. Denotation refers to the meaning found in a dictionary. These meanings have evolved through time and have some precision. Connotation refers to the emotional meaning that specific speakers and listeners give to a word. Words come with associations that contribute to their meanings. These associations are part of their poetry, but can also be part of their baggage. In fact, common English usage has disconfirmed women and people of color in the past. Again, as does all meaning, verbal meanings depend on context. The physical, psychological, social, and temporal environment in which the communication takes place. One very important context that we've been made more and more aware of in the last generation is cultural. Culture teaches ways of using verbal messages as acceptable or unacceptable. Let's discuss cultural context in more detail. The principle of cooperation holds that in any communication interaction, both parties will make an effort to help each other understand each other. Generally, we do this in four ways. We obey the maxims or rules of quality, relation, manner, and quantity. Quality asks that we say what we know or assume to be true. Relation asks that we talk about what is relevant to the conversation. Manner asks that we be clear, brief, organized. Quantity, a fourth maxim, asks we be as informative as necessary to communicate the information. To practice these behaviors is to help ensure understanding. We often practice civility in our communications. We preserve peaceful relations and practice face-saving and self-denigration. To violate these principles is to risk being seen as deviant or perhaps insulting. Another important communication context is that of gender. Over the years, research has established distinctive gender behaviors for communication. Here are three. Women tend to seek agreement in conversation. Men appear to be more direct communicators. Both men and women use politeness when communicating bad news. Now we know that messages will vary in politeness, and that online politeness, netiquette, has become a concern of late because of online communication's penchant for directness. But online or face-to-face, we can communicate our meanings with direct or indirect messages. Messages vary in assertiveness. To speak assertively rather than aggressively, present-day wisdom suggests problems be described without evaluation or judgment, and that we own these communications with I messages. To propose solutions that allow for face-saving and to make sure we are understood are also seen as important components of assertive speaking. Now we come to essential concerns of this chapter and this course: confirmation and disconfirmation. When we practice confirmation, we communicate acceptance of another person's presence and message, as well as his or her definition of self and our relationship with that person as viewed by that person. On the other hand, disconfirmation denies another person's right to define himself or herself, and ignores that person's communication and presence. Verbal messages are used to confirm and disconfirm not only individuals but entire groups of people. Let's consider 4 common forms of disconfirmation supported and advanced by verbal messages and the connotations of language. Racism, a form of disconfirmation that disparages human beings on the basis of race, has been advanced through language and has plagued the United States. Racism can be conscious or unconscious, individual or institutionalized. Heterosexism is a form of disconfirmation that denies legitimacy to gays. It advances the position that all that is not heterosexual is unnatural and deserving of condemnation, even to the point of violence and denial of rights. Heterosexism can be individual and institutional, and its perceptions are advanced through language. Ageism is a form of disconfirmation that can be problematic for any generation, although we tend to consider it as a pattern of behaviors directed particularly toward the elderly. Again, to avoid ageism, one should engage people in conversation as one would wish to be engaged. Sexism is a form of disconfirmation that advances prejudicial attitudes and beliefs about men or women based on rigid beliefs about gender rules. We are advised to use gender-free, gender-neutral, or sex-fair language to defeat this kind of disconfirmation. Perhaps the best way to develop non-racist, non-heterosexist, non-ageist, non-sexist language is to examine the preferred cultural identifiers to use in talking to and about members of different groups. These cultural identifiers provide respectful language when discussing race, nationality, affectional orientation, age, and sex, important human realities which must be discussed and researched. Finally, let's discuss some of the limitations of language. With intentional orientation, people are reduced to labels, the word or words which we use to represent them. With this reduction, complexity and identity vanish, and only a portion of a person's reality is represented in the label. Allness is seen as a related distortion of human reality. We're reminded that even in our sophisticated historical moment, We can never experience anything fully enough to entirely represent that experience in language. We're asked to remember that language expresses both facts and inferences. Nonetheless, once an idea is expressed in words, even if it is an inference without proof, the expression seems factual and creates confusion. We're reminded that language is relatively static, and we tend to retain evaluations without changing the words, even though the realities those words once represented have changed. Finally, language can obscure distinctions. We have a limited number of words, and often use the same words to describe people, objects, or events, which are really quite separate in reality. Additionally, we're guilty of such indiscrimination when we let category words take the place of more specific, unique phenomena. Language creates distinctions, and these distinctions are presented often in terms of opposites. Polarization takes place when we indulge our tendencies to view the world as a place of opposites, supported only by contrasts. One of language's natural dispositions. This concludes Learning Module 4's PowerPoint lecture on some relevant aspects of verbal messages. Next, we'll consider culture and communication.